Hello and welcome to today's Polyanalyst tutorial. Today we'll be covering the sample and bias sample nodes, which will let us take a sample of our data set. First we'll be covering the sample node. So we have three tasks. We will be sampling 30% of the data set. Then we'll sample specifically 50 records, taking every third record. And then we will sample a specific range of records. We want records 100 to 200 from the original data set. So looking at our data set, this is our car statistics data set. Nothing special here. There are 398 rows. So we're going to right click our sample node and go to properties. By default, it has random rows selected, but it is on number of rows. So this is where we could specify the number of rows we want in our output, but instead we want 30%. So we're going to click percentage and change it to 30% and execute. So we've gone from 398 to 119 rows. Next, we want 50 records, but taking every third record. So we right click the node, go to properties. We change the sampling method to 1 in n rows. And then we change n to 3 and the maximum number of records to 50. Then we execute, and we can see that we do indeed now have 50 rows. And when we look at the output, I have derived a new column for the data set that has the original record number of the record. So we can see that indeed we've taken the 3rd, 6th, 9th, 12th, and 15 record and so on. So this is what the 1 in 3 records means. And finally, we will be sampling from rows 100 to 200. So we right click, go to properties, change sample method to selective range. So here we pick the first row of the sample and then how many rows we want to take after the first row. And to get to 200, we actually need 101 total records. So we click execute and check the results, and we can see that we now have from record 100 all the way to 200 for a total of 101 rows. So that covers the simple sample node. Next, we're going to look at the bias sample. So we want to take a bias sample that evens out the country distribution. If we look back at our data sets, you may recall that there is an origin column. If we click the distinct tab down here in the bottom left and look at origin, we can see how many different records from each origin are in the data set. We can see that it is mostly USA data. So if we wanted a more even distribution, that's what we can use the biased sample node for. So let's right click and go to properties. And to configure this node, we need to create SRL expressions. So first, I'm going to say origin equals USA. We're going to change this to be 33%. It looks like there was already a rule that I skipped here. And we want origin equals Japan. And one more rule, we need origin equals Europe. And make sure these are all even. And we can click execute. And now when we check the distribution, we can see that they are more even. Now, there is a randomness to the sampling, so they are not all the exact same number, but it took random sampling while attempting to make them those fractions that we selected. Now, the other task was to use random sampling. So let's talk about that for a second. We have this option here, random choice, and use random seed. So we have random choice selected, which is what we needed for our task, and we have random seed. So if we use a random seed every time we execute the node, we will get a different sample. If we don't use a random seed, we can generate a seed and it will use the same seed every time we execute the node. So that means that as long as the incoming data set does not change, the output sample will always be the same. The other option is to uncheck random choice, and this will use a stepwise optimization algorithm that goes through the records, starting with the first record and proceeding onward. So the order of the records will matter for this option. You can read more about that in the user manual. But we were using a random choice, and we had a random seed selected, or we can select the seed. And that's it for today's tutorial. Hope you have a wonderful day.